we're back for episode number 5 of Percussion Discussion Shop Talk, and a good friend of mine is with me, and it's Tristan from Drumattic. How you doing, mate?
I am good, thank you very much. How are you?
I'm very good, mate. It's good to see you again. I think it was the Vintage Drum Show back in Coventry in last October when I think we last met up. But I spent some money with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you picked up some calfskin drum heads.
I did, yeah. We should be talking about them. Really pleased with them, actually. So, yeah. So you're down in now. I must pronounce this correctly because you've just moved, and I believe it's Frome, isn't it? It's not Frome.
That is, yeah.
Frome.
Yeah, it's amazing because it is one of those places. There's like, for a small town, there's quite a big music venue, and so you get a lot of people come and they say, "Oh, it's great to be in Frome." And then sort of immediately the locals are sort of all over that sort of thing. But yeah, good pronunciation.
Thank you. Is it the Cheese and Grain in Frome? Is that the venue?
That's the one.
Yeah, good venue. Yeah, that's cool. So you as you say, music's kind of thriving down there, isn't it? So it can only be good for you.
It is, yeah, and it's very lucky because obviously there's a lot of parts of the southwest and everything which kind of suffer in general with funding and transport and all this sort of thing. So there are a lot of sort of towns and villages which kind of the music scene has almost died out and all the pubs have become gastro pubs and there's no live music. But Frome is one of those places which is great in general. It's very arty in general, very creative. And a couple music venues and art venues and loads going on. So it's a really nice place to be sort of creatively, as it were.
Because I know you've recently moved to Frome. That is your, Drumattic has moved. Is that where you actually live? Are you based in Frome then?
It is, yeah. I actually live in Frome. So,
sorry,
that's all right. No worries. It'll be back and forth the whole time, imagine.
It will.
But yeah, no, it's, I mean, I've lived here for probably about 6 or 7 years. But I was in Radstock for about 6 years, just because I had a 5-year lease which went on a little bit longer and all that sort of stuff. And then I was effectively made to move from there because I think they're planning to develop it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I was sort of looking around, and this must have been about 18 months ago, and I kind of wanted to keep it in Frome and keep it kind of a bit more local and less traveling and all that sort of stuff. And it, like I say, it's just a better place for the business, sort of in general, really.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, and you're kind of for anybody watching or listening, if they're listening on the podcast, who is unaware of what you do, you kind of do everything really, from you renovate, you sell mainly vintage stuff, but not all vintage. I believe you have some slightly newer stuff in as well occasionally.
Yeah, totally. So I sort of started off mostly just in sort of repair and restoration. And so obviously it's one of those things, sort of the restoration happens to come with a lot of vintage kits which may have been misused or left in the garage, left in the loft and all that sort of thing. But all the sort of repairs and customizations I'll do on any kit, any sort of make, model, age, anything from sort of something that's been left in a garage for 50 years that needs everything done, down to someone who might have a brand new DW kit who just wants an L arm put on the bass drum or something sort of modified or sort of a tom wrapped to match their kit sort of thing. So it sort of started off in that really, and then it just sort of grew, and I sort of effectively gained stock, as it were, and because of a lack of music shops, but especially a lack of drum shops sort of in the southwest, it just ended up with loads of my sort of drummer friends always wanting to get some heads and get some sticks, and so it just sort of became a shop. And then I sort of try to offer pretty much as I can for drummers who want to get their stuff either matching or roadworthy or studio session ready and all that sort of thing, really.
Yeah, it's a really useful service. I mean, because not everyone wants to, as you said, putting a tom arm onto a shiny new DW kit. I certainly wouldn't want to do that. You only get one chance of doing it, don't you? You don't get a second.
Definitely.
So I'd rather give you the worry and stress of it and say you do it, and then if if you make excuse my French, you make a balls of it, then it's your problem, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, something that I've got to deal with in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that sounds.
Rather than, I mean, I've had it quite a few times before, that exact thing, where people have sort of come to me and they've sort of almost got their tail between their legs and they're saying, "Oh, I tried to, change the mount on my tom or the strainer on my snare drum or something like that, and it's just sort of, you know, they sort of slip with a drill or something like that, and like slice through their wrap or dented their lacquer or stuff like that." So yeah, I think things like that sometimes are better to let, if you'll excuse the phrase, let a professional sort of handle it, and someone who will sort of take it on and in a sense would have done it 100 times before. So
absolutely,
instead of stressing over it in the garage for half a day, it can go in the workshop and be done in sort of 10 minutes, as it were.
Yeah. And do you know what else I really like about your I don't want to call it a shop because it's more than a shop, but you've got parts for from the smallest item, whether it be a bolt for an Ajax or something. You've generally got it, haven't you? From the
totally. So I mean, it's one of those weird things that, as much as I love to have, and which I do, have a really nice selection of like snare drums and kits and odds and sods in, and it's nice to have those. But for most sort of consumers of like vintage kits and players of vintage kits, you might only buy a handful of vintage kits in your lifetime. But if you're using them regularly, you might find that you lose a wing nut and you lose a screw, and they're a specific vintage thread, or a lug cracks. And there's been loads of people before where I've effectively had a part in stock, and some of them have said, "Oh my God, thank you so much. I've been looking for this part since the 90s," sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it gets their thing up and running. So it's always really nice to know that someone can sometimes come on the website and spend like £2 on a random bolt, and then you get an email thanking you because they're using that snare in the studio and they couldn't find one for love nor money anywhere else. And I try to genuinely supply as much as possible that other people might desperately need, as it were.
Yeah. So I'm guessing nothing gets thrown away with you. If you get a drum that's beyond saving, it's just stripped and put into boxes and catalogued, and it's as simple as that, I guess.
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, that's it's one of those. I always try and sort of save as much as possible in terms of if I can, rescue entire drums and matching kits and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes you'll get sort of like a van of stuff show up, and you've got 3 or 4 full kits and some really nice snare drums, and then almost like the back of someone's shed where they haven't thrown anything away for 50 years.
Yeah.
And they sort of sorry, my cat's going on outside. You'll have to excuse me if you can hear him. But yeah, and so they're sort of have odds and sods which might be sort of damaged beyond repair or unsalvageable. So I'm awful for not throwing things out in general, but in the business side of sense, it's very beneficial because it just means that other people who could be missing parts, who need to complete drums, can actually get the parts they need. Yeah. Instead of just like a full drum ending up in the skip sort of thing somewhere.
Yeah. So it's honestly, I really do. I think you're a credit to the UK drum scene, if you like. Because there's plenty of us who like the vintage stuff. What have I got here? I've got I can't even see what it is. It's a Royal Ace, a 14x4 Royal Ace.
Nice.
Things break on it, and you lose bits, and you need somewhere. You can't go to Thomann and buy bits for it. It's got to be somewhere specialist like yourself. So good.
Yeah, I think that's it. And it's like a lot of customers sometimes of mine, they'll send me an email that's sort of like a really huge long description of the part they need, and they're worried that I'm not going to know what they're talking about and they're going to struggle to find it. And then I'll email back with a link on the website and be like, yeah, these are the ones. And they'll be like, oh my Lord, he's got them and he knows what I'm talking about. And he knows the drum I mentioned, sort of thing.
Do you get, obviously you do a mail order service. Do you get a lot from abroad as well? Or is it generally UK?
Yeah, I get an awful lot from abroad, actually. It's amazing sort of what orders do come in. Some huge orders for like big huge kits. I sold a Sonor Horselink Signature Series Babinga kit, which was 4 toms, 2 floor toms, and a big bass drum. So massive, heavy 12-ply, monster kit.
Are these like the square sized ones?
Yeah, square sizes. So 10, 10, 12, 12, 14. Well, actually, I say that the floor toms were slightly deeper. So they were 16 by 18 and then 15 by 17, I think.
Monsters.
But that ended up going to the USA. So, and that's sort of, like 60, 70 kilograms of drums sort of thing.
Yeah.
And again, small parts, people who might have, have like, a snare drum that they've had for years and years, and they live in Norway, Sweden, America, Australia or something. And especially for sort of British parts, they just say that, the drums themselves don't crop up in those countries, let alone sort of the parts for them. But yeah, so it's all sort of worldwide. I mean, sort of the Brexit thing and everything has sort of taken, that was noticeable with sort of European orders and shipping and sort of decline in that because of customs and taxes and other payments and all that sort of thing. But apart from that, it's pretty much a worldwide service, and most stuff will be shipped. There are some sort of extremely large items or bulky items I have that I tend to, ideally prefer sort of collection on, but the majority of stuff sort of gets shipped worldwide.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I'll make sure that your website goes in the description and everything at the end of this the video, so people can have a look. If they're in, if they need something. And do you know what? One of my favorite things that you do, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but I've just seen my keys, and I dropped it. Hang on a second. As most people, I'd like to think most gigging drummers keep a drum key on their keys, because if you've driven there, you've generally got a drum key with you. But is this beauty? I swear by this, because like the drum I've got here and a few others, it's the slotted tension bolts. And now this kind of covers it all, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah, it kind of says everything, really. I mean, those, to a degree, those are one of those things I should have had those done years ago, but the company I was working with during the pandemic ended up going, losing out and all that sort of stuff and going under. And so it was one of those things that I was trying to do for years and years. And for such a simple design, it gets incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. Well, let me just, I'm going to put it a little bit closer to the camera, and hopefully you can see that. You can see the Drumattic logo. And so it's kind of one size fits all, doesn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah. I think the only ones that doesn't really do is the Sonor drums, because they're obviously a bit chunkier, but Sonor do still make keys for that, so I don't tend to worry too much. But yeah, those will fit sort of old Leedies, Premiers, Heymans, Ajax, B&H, Beverly Olympic, all those sort of things, which is so useful because I mean, the originals of those keys now, I don't know if you ever follow it sort of thing, some of those can go, 50, 75, 100 quid a key. And within 6 months, you're probably going to lose a gig anyway because it's a drum key. And the last thing you want to do is get home and realise that you've, lost 100 quid on a pub floor sort of thing.
Totally. Well, I actually bought two of those keys, and I sent one over to a friend of mine, Rob Reiner, who's the drummer from Anvil in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And so nice. Rob is a big collector of 60s and 70s metal snares. And I think I sent him over... it was a Cosmic 21.
Oh, very nice.
I love it. He said, but I haven't got a key. So I sent him one of the keys over. So he's got one of your keys as well, which, but he's got what's he using at the moment? I sent him this drum over as well. It was a Heyman Metasonic. So
very nice as well, yeah.
He has it hanging from under his Metasonic on his current world tour. So there you go.
Oh, nice.
You're worldwide.
There we go. Yeah, some free advertising there, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know how many people will see that, but anyway, hey.
we know.
Yeah. So it's a great little design, and cheap enough to have one at home, one on your key ring. There you go. Look at all this free advertising I'm doing for you. Now, when we met up in the Vintage Drum Fair in Coventry, I wasn't intending on spending any money that day, and you had some very nice calfskin heads. Now, I was amazed at the prices of them, as in they weren't expensive compared to other brands. But you lap them yourself.
I do, yeah. And that's, again, one of those things vintage drums in terms of the shells and the hardware and everything is great, but it's only really sort of part of the story sometimes. And I work obviously with, I do backline and hire and stuff like that in sessions with studios and things like that. And so many times, a studio will be like, oh, we've got a 1964 super classic and we've done everything we can to get it super vintage and we've dampened it. But they're sort of using Remo coated ambassadors and they're still getting that sort of, it sounds amazing, but they're just not getting, like a early 60s or earlier sound.
Yeah.
And so obviously, the drum heads make a huge difference sort of thing. So there were so many kits that came in that I wanted them to have that original sound that they would have had, or for my own recording or for studios. So it just became sort of like a natural thing of doing them for sort of drums that came in and went out, and for other people's restorations, if they had sort of 1920s drum which was 27.5 inches sort of thing, and you're never going to get ahead for that, so the only option is to sort of lap an original. And then I gradually, it's again sort of more of a time thing, but I gradually got into the thing where I was just able to, if I had a morning sort of semi-quiet at the shop, I could go and lap sort of 10-15 heads or something like that and get them sort of like ready and set and all that sort of thing. So I don't tend to keep a huge amount in stock, but I do make them rather regularly. But so for things like the drum fair or something like that, I did a handful and took them up, and it's just again one of those things that just makes such a difference. And that's also one of those areas where a lot of people have sort of emailed me and they've said, oh my God, I've got a 1953 Gretsch round badge, whatever it is, and this is the first time I've ever actually liked the drum sort of thing. And they say, oh, I've had it for 30 years and it's always been okay, but they say I've put the calfskin head on it and that's just what it needed sort of thing.
I mean, how do you learn to make calfskin heads? Is that, do you do a course? Do you go and study it? How did that come about? I'm intrigued by this.
I think it's the first time I've been asked that. It's one of those, I suppose I just kind of taught myself, which obviously sounds weird, obviously, because you need sort of knowledge and stuff from somewhere. But I think I just kind of taught myself gradually over time, because loads of kits come in and you kind of see them and you handle them all the time and you start to realize, this one's a bit damp, therefore it's flexible, and it's a bit loose, and this is, coming untucked. So you kind of see it. And then there are just a lot of people I know, sort of older people who've played drums for a long time, who were there when calfskin heads were on kits, and they just say, oh yeah, I remember, I broke my snare head and then I was up with a tablespoon trying to lap the old one through at 2 a.m. in the morning and stuff like that. And it took a little while, but it was one of those things that I just one day kind of thought, well, I've got hoops and I've got new skin and everything like that for this, so it's just might as well. I think the first one I ever did was I had a massive, something like a 26-inch bass drum head that had a split down the side. So I just cut round it, put it on a 14, and thought, I've seen it done and that sort of thing, so I might as well give it a go. And it is like everything. It's one of those things. The first one I did years and years ago, you tend to think, oh, this will be easy, and then you start doing it and it comes unfolded, and then you're sort of chasing it round, and then it's doing that. But when you've done, obviously, quite a lot, you get used to it. But like everything, there are those first trials and tribulations of, split heads in the morning because you've done them too tight.
Yeah.
And all this thing, yeah.
It must be an incredibly satisfying thing, though, when you get that the first really good one done that is right, and it must be. I know I would be very satisfied with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I still get that, because there are some, because obviously like calf skin in itself isn't something that can be produced like sort of plastic mylar heads. You can't say, oh, this is going to be 3 mil in this thickness and this weight. It's all sort of varied. And sometimes there are just nice pieces that come in that just work out absolutely perfectly, just look perfect. You put it on, it sounds amazing, and you just think, oh yeah, that's the kind of the final touch of that. Yeah, it can be quite satisfying. And,
oh yeah. And I always find that they're very tactile things to handle as well. And there's almost they're almost pre-tensioned, some of them, and I like that. You can almost hear a pitch without them being on a drum, so you get an idea of how they're going to sound. And I like that. The ones I've had from you, have been fantastic. They really have. I've still got them. Don't use them all the time, but just amazing things. So there you go.
Nice. Yeah, they are. I mean, they're like everything. They're not suited for every sort of situation, playing and recording wise. But to have sort of a set in the arsenal, sometimes if someone says, "Oh, we want sort of like a really old school Joe Morello kind of sound," and you think, "Oh yeah, I can get that." Calfskins on the toms, and you just get a lot more sort of warmth and nuance in them, I find.
Absolutely. Oh, amazing. Well, tell me, Tristan, how did you get into the vintage thing? Because you're a fairly young guy. So how? Well, I think you are anyway.
I might just look good. I might. You never know.
Maybe. Just take it as a compliment then. But why the vintage thing? How did that come about?
It's again one of those things. I'm not really 100% sure, sort of thing. I mean, when like most drummers, I think I started when I was sort of 14, 15, sort of thing. So like most people, when they start those age, you haven't got sort of money to put into an instrument. You're not going to go out and spend $2,000 on a DW and $1,000 on cymbals and all this sort of stuff. So usually it's sort of secondhand gear and whatever you can find, sort of thing. So I kind of started out like that, and then I suppose gradually over time I saw bits and bobs that would be for sale, sort of down the road or in the music shop or something like that. And some of it's sort of old vintage bits, and some of it was you get to the stage where you get stuff which is missing bits, or you want to just know a bit more about, because you think, I mean, it's a bit like sort of 3-ply shells with RE rings, the really old-fashioned ones. A lot of people now, sort of under 20 or something, if you're not into that, they look at that and they think, "Oh my God, what's this? This is so weird and new and fresh." And some of it, you just think, "Oh, this is how they were built, 100 years ago or whatever." And it just kind of interested me, really, because I like modern stuff and all of that, but I always found the vintage stuff came with like a history of it. When you're into bands and older music, you start to see old music videos or old stadiums, and you're thinking, "Oh, hey, he's playing a premiere such and such, or he's playing a Ludwig downbeat and he's doing this." And all this stuff sort of came with sort of an era of sort of like an iconic nature and authenticity to it, which had like all this history and this richness, and to a degree as well, sort of imperfection, which is what I kind of like. Some drums that people rave about, certain vintage kits or eras, aren't necessarily particularly well made by today's standards, but they produce a sound and they have something to them which modern kits can't exactly provide. So it was just one of those. It just kind of interested me, and obviously with vintage kits there tends to be more missing, more that needs to be repaired or done or restored or rewrapped or stuff like that. So that just kind of took off, and then like everything before I knew it, it was people were asking me sort of like specific vintage advice and all this sort of stuff, and I found myself for some reason knowing the answers, and just sort of kind of went on from there, really.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a huge kind of a huge scene, if you like, for vintage equipment across the UK, and I think the Vintage Drum Fair, Simon John's, is testament to that. A whole weekend of people absolutely just piling into this place, pouring over old gear. It's great. I love that weekend. I really do, and it is
amazing. Yeah.
So there's a popularity for it, and I think there always will be. And I like my part of my fascination with vintage equipment is you don't know where that kit, snare drum, cymbal, whatever it might be, has been before. You don't know who's played it. You don't know what venues it's done. I find it fascinating. I really do.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it's like sometimes, someone will come to me, they could be in their 70s, 80s or 90s sort of thing. And they might be selling on, sort of a kit to me to sell on, or I'm selling on behalf of them or something like that. And sometimes it's amazing with that, because I mean, there's one I've got in the shop at the moment actually now, which is a sort of very early 60s Premiere, which is like a one owner from new jobby, and you get this whole sort of like, they say, oh yeah, you know, I was 17 and it was 1964 and I bought this in this shop in London and I played here and here, and it's been to Europe, it's been to America, it's been on the cruises and stuff like that. And yeah, sometimes it's nice because you do get the story, and other times, especially with sort of higher end gear, which was always expensive in the past, you think, you know, for someone to have gone out and spent, you know, that amount of money in, you know, 1960 or whatever it was, it must have been sort of like either someone who's quite well off or someone who's sort of like, you know, doing quite well in the drumming thing and probably is playing that in places and shows and whatever it is and recording with it. And yeah, there is this nice sort of richness of history to everything, really.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I think I almost prefer the not quite knowing. You kind of let your imagination run away with you a little bit and go, well, it could have done, you know.
Yeah, and occasionally you'll be sort of watching a documentary or a music video and you'll see someone playing a similar kit and you'll be like, is that my kit? Could that be the one? Yeah.
Well, you never know. You never know. And so I have to ask, do you have a favorite thing in stock at the moment that you would happily keep if you like? I know it's yours.
Well,
anyway,
it's hard. I mean, a lot of my stuff I do think I would keep if I didn't have to eat and pay bills. But what have I got at the moment? You know, I've a lot of tasty snare drums in at the moment, I have to say. That is a very, very hard question because, yeah, most of it I am quite a fan of. I do have a big 1970s Fibes fiberglass sort of 24, 13, 14, 18 kit, which if I kept, I would never use. I'd never have any need for that volume and those size. But it's just, there's a lot of kits like that which sometimes come in and I just wonder, I'm not sure I'm ever going to see one again, sort of thing, or see one in the same condition. So that would probably be one. And there's a couple snare drums that I'd always keep and just keep if I could, sort of Ludwig 400s and Premier 2000 snare drums I'm a big fan of, and Royal Aces, and so realistically I'd probably keep mostly everything if I had a use for it and didn't need money to survive.
The Premier 2000 is just always a great sounding. I have one and it is the scruffiest, ugliest, most pitted thing in the world, but I would never put that with it. It sounds amazing. It really does. Yeah,
totally. They're one of those. I mean, I find there's a lot of this in vintage drums. They're kind of overlooked in the vintage market, certainly in the UK.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, and it's the same with like Olympic and Beverly kits and stuff like that. People will look at it these days if they're British and they'd be like, "Oh, that's a piece of rubbish. My school had 3 of those, or that was my first drum and it was awful." And then, you know, I get sort of Americans and sort of like Eastern Europeans and stuff like that message me every couple of weeks saying, "Do you have any 2000s in stock? You know, I'll give you whatever you want for them." Which always does amaze me because I find it's almost the opposite in America. There's some people who I deal with who say sort of, you know, sometimes a school over there, high school, will be having a clear out and they've got 150 acrylites that were just like, "Oh yeah, well, you know, we bought them in the 70s because they were cheap and, you know, they're selling them on." And now there's that sort of like cross-Atlantic like romanticism of like all the Brits want the Ludwigs and the Gretches and the Slingerlands, and a lot of the Americans and stuff want the Premiers and the Ajaxes and that sort of thing. But Premier 2000 I would say is one of those that is very underrated as a snare and can do an awful lot. But like you say, with the chrome on the aluminium never tends to last particularly well, so they do look a bit tatty.
Great drums though. What do you use yourself when you're out gigging and doing whatever you do? Do you have a standard sort of set?
I'm probably rather spoilt, to be honest, because with sort of like the business and everything, I do sort of backline and hire of like specific vintage kits. So I think that is probably about sort of 12 or 13 kits and maybe about 20 snare drums and I've got there some sort of timpani and some congas and all that sort of stuff. And because it's sort of mostly vintage themed and stuff gets used for it does sometimes get used for live situations or bands or theatre shows who are doing things that are set in the 50s or 60s or stuff. But a lot of it tends to be more for sort of studio use and, say, filming if someone's doing a film which is 1930 and nothing can be older. So that's, as much as I tend to pass that off as backline and hire for the business, which it kind of is.
I know where you're going.
That's the only reason I sort of justify that is so I can keep it. So I do get very spoiled. So there's everything on there. I've got a big Ajax kit from sort of the 30s, which is like a 28 by 10 bass drum, and I think 12 by 9, 14 by 18, and 16 by 18. So that's massive. And got a Ludwig downbeat and a super classic, and really nice sort of Beverly grey oyster, grey silk and kit, and a nice little Olympic kit, and a nice Slingerland kit, and a Ludwig stainless steel. And so all of that is kind of on there. It's all kind of specific in its own right, but that effectively becomes my playground, as it were. But I'm sort of in my own little sort of like shed studio at home here, and the one that I tend to use a lot here is a early 70s Olympic mahogany shells, which is a 20 by 12, so like slightly shallower, really nice, and a 12 by 8 and a 14 by 14 with calfskin heads. And that tends to do, like, you know, the stuff that I want to do at home because it's quite quiet, it's quite small. But yeah, I've got a lot of choices, probably more than is healthy, really.
I can see everyone at home just going, "Oh man!" So
it was just like, I hate this guy. This guy is horrible. I hate him.
Essentially, they're your drum kits that you hire out to other people. Then, really, that's the way it is.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some, you know, which I keep because I want to have a like a 1950s kit in case someone needs it or someone wants that sort of thing. But there are some kits which just go out in and out all the time. So I've got a sort of mid 60s Ludwig super classic in WMP, and that goes out a lot. And about the same era downbeat in white marine pearl as well, and that goes out a lot. Stainless steel Ludwig goes out a lot because that's sort of bottom sizes 24, 14, 18. And that's always used on recordings in sort of local areas and stuff. And it's quite nice because it is in quite a good area as well, because there's sort of real world studios not too far from me, and NARM studios not too far from me. And there's loads of real nice sort of pockets of serious studios and stuff. And in sort of like Frome and the surrounding area, there's loads of what I call sort of like shed studios and small studios and garden room studios. For people doing their own thing. So it's, you know, sometimes someone will want to hire a big kit for a big recording at Real World for 3 weeks. And other times someone will just be like, oh, I'm doing a little recording in the garden. Can I hire a snare drum for the afternoon? I just need something a bit beefy and whatever sort of thing. But yeah, it's sort of my playground more really.
I'll tell you what, and why not? Good on you. Is there like the holy grail thing that you've always wanted in the shop but never had yet? Is there anything in particular?
Oh, I mean, when I first started off doing this, and I was sort of a late teenager, early 20s, all the sort of internet stuff it wasn't as big as it was today, and it wasn't as easy, and smartphones were not really smart, and all this sort of thing. And I always wanted a Premier 2000 because I remember seeing them in the catalogue, and I was like, that is a sexy drum. I was like, that is nice. I was like, the strainer, the chrome, the die-cast hoops, everything on it. I was like, that's really nice. And it's slightly weird because now it's sort of like a decade or so later, and I've had sort of hundreds of them come in and go. And every time they come in, I still think they're amazing.
Of course.
But oddly enough, no, I'd say I've had probably most things in about a year or so ago, which I think you probably saw at the last Vintage Drum Fair. I had a Leedy 1927 Black Elite engraved, original calfskin heads with the stamps and everything. And that would have, if we'd had this conversation about sort of like 18 months ago, that would have probably been my bucket list item sort of thing as well. And then it sort of came in. But I do feel very lucky. I mean, as much as I'm very lucky with the backline and high to be able to keep it, that does also get a lot of use and justifies keeping it. But there's a lot of stuff which comes in the shop which is very hard to get rid of. And you look at it, and obviously you know how much you paid for it, and you know you need to sell it, and you know you need, you know, bills are coming in and things are stacking up and all of this, but it's a very hard part of the job, I have to say. Actually, like getting rid of, you know, high quality rare stuff, things that again you think I'm probably never gonna see one of those again, let alone have one, sort of thing. But yeah, I can't think of anything that would be on the list actually for that. No, I said I wouldn't mind a nice Sona Horselink Babinga 14x8 snare drum. I've not had one of them. I've had the other sort of signature series and the Horselink, you know, ferromanganese and stuff like that, but not a Babinga one. That would be nice.
Well, you've just sold the kit to go with it, so
yeah, definitely. Although the guy did say when he bought it, he was like, "If a snare drum comes in, you have to tell me." And I was just thinking, "Ooh, maybe."
Blimey. And as far as if anybody wants to come to the shop, is it appointment or are you open certain days? Because I know with
yeah, and it's at the moment it's sort of a bit of an odd one because I've obviously I've just moved there, so there's been probably about 3 or 4 months of pretty much complete chaos of it was where I was before was like a 3-story building. So I had like the shop on the lower section and then the workshop above me and then sort of like teaching and practice rooms and stuff on the top.
Yeah.
And conjoined it was probably, you know, best part of sort of like 75 kits, a couple hundred snare drums, loads of big percussion and everything like that. So it's been sort of pretty mental moving that all out and moving it around and setting up the new place, which needed sort of, you know, walls built, doors put in, walls painted, all that sort of thing. But it's getting to kind of to the end of it. So at the moment, pretty much, I think for the next maybe 6 weeks or 2 months, I'm going to be sort of appointment only.
Yeah, sure.
And I am away sort of on personal stuff for 2 weeks in October where I will be sort of just closed, as it were. Because I haven't had that for about 3 years now, sort of thing. So for the next sort of 2 months, I say it's sort of pretty much an appointment only basis, and then after that, because I'm still waiting for other things to just be finished in the building, sort of like some carpet to go down and all the fun stuff. So after that, it will be one of those things where I'll probably be open again 3 or 4 days a week, for people to just pop in. Which is good. I'd like, it's one of those hard things. It would be nice to be open more and sort of, you know, Monday to Saturday or whatever, but obviously you've got to do all the work in between people coming in, sort of thing, and all the restorations and finding stuff and working on it and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I imagine in a couple of months' time, certainly before sort of Christmas, before November and everything, it will be back on most likely sort of a Thursday, Friday, Saturday opening time on the basis.
Oh, that's good to know. So pretty much you're kind of one-stop shop for, you know, repairs, renovations, re-wraps. Is there anything you won't touch, sort of repair-wise? Or are you happy to do with, you know, do you do edges and everything, bearing edges?
Yeah, I do all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, bearing edges, shell sort of reductions and modifications and all that sort of thing. I can't think actually. I mean, there's most stuff. I mean, there's some stuff which sort of just can't be done in general. Like sometimes someone will say, "Oh, I've got a steel snare drum that's 14x8 and I want it down to 14x5," and you just think, "Well, I don't know how you're gonna, how you're gonna do that." That's interesting. But
angle grinder.
Yeah, totally angle grinder and a bit of a hammer on that. I'll be fine. That'll sound fine. But yeah, so there's some stuff which sort of just can't be done. But most of it, I will sort of happily do, and most of it I've sort of, you know, by now at this point in the career have got experience of working with. I think there was one which came in about a year ago, which I was confident but apprehensive with, sort of thing, which was this massive, I think it was 36-inch by 18-inch deep rope-tuned bass drum from the 1800s,
right?
Which belonged to, and still belongs to, Wiveliscombe Town Band, one of the oldest town bands in the country. And it was used to play for Queen Victoria when she visited the area. And it's got like So it's a massive wooden thing with the classic rope tuning, calfskin heads, and it's got like the emblems, Victoria, the Regina, like sort of emblems on there and stuff like that. And so that was one where they needed some sort of a new head on it and new rope and new tuning and a general cleanup. But obviously when things are that age, you have this fear that you're going to take the rope off and it's just going to disintegrate sort of thing. But yeah, so most of the stuff like that, obviously some stuff when it comes to older things like that you do have to be aware of the age and, you know, obviously take a lot more. I mean, you take care with everything, but obviously you just take a bit more care and everything with that, certainly when dismantling things and putting things back together. But yeah, so it's pretty much everything that will get done, really, apart from things which physically cannot be done, I would imagine. Which is quite a bold statement, really.
Yeah, well, you know, you've obviously got a confidence in what you do, so why not, you know, sell it? And hey, that's the way it is. So do you sell like sticks and heads and all the usual stuff for you know, the regular stuff that drummers need?
I do, yeah. So when I first started off, it was sort of just sort of 10 years ago or whatever. It was more sort of just like a small workshop for restorations and repairs. But then, like I say, with the sort of the lack of drum shops, especially, and the lack of music shops in the area, I just effectively almost just wanted to help out drummers in the area, because I remember being sort of like 21 and I'd have to travel into like all the way into the centre of Bristol to get a pair of drumsticks in the size I want, sort of thing. And, you know, if you're playing a gig in 2 hours and you realise that you've broken your snare drum head and you need a new one and you can't sort of, you know, pop down the road or something, it becomes very sort of inconvenient. So yeah, so I mean, the shop, there's a lot of vintage stuff and a lot of high end stuff, but I also want to keep stuff which just keeps people ticking over: sticks, brushes, heads, percussion-y bits, gel dampeners, bass drum logos, all that sort of thing. So, you know, someone can you know, call up or pop an email and swing in at sort of 4:30 on a Friday and say, oh, you know, I'm playing a gig in a couple of hours, I just need some sticks and a head, and thank you very much, and that's that sort of thing.
Now, you mentioned with your previous location, you had a rehearsal space. Is that something that you've got in the new location as well?
New location will have a rehearsal space. It's about halfway through being built at the moment, which is another reason I'm going to be sort of appointment only over the next couple of months, because I'm still building that, as it were. And that's, yeah, long process. It's going to be quite a big room. I mean, where I was before was quite good because it was sort of a separate building, so and it was about 3 stories high, the rehearsal room, so I didn't really have to worry that much about sound.
Yeah.
But there's a couple more businesses and stuff where I am now, and it'll just be a bit easier for recording and other things like that. So yeah, about halfway through building the second inner wall of that, and God knows how much rock wool and all that sort of stuff. But I'm hoping in the next couple of months that'll be up and running. And yeah, sort of like before, people used it so sort of like a practice space for either drummers who, you know, can't practice at home because they can't make noise. People came before and do recording up there, sort of band practice. I do teaching and stuff up there and everything as well. So that'll be good. And I think this one will be slightly more purposeful in that, in terms of I'm in talks with a couple other people to try and get sort of like small master classes and little teaching sessions and like day sessions there as well from sort of drummers and recording people and studio engineers and stuff like that. So hopefully I'll be able to do a little bit more in that sort of broader kind of education thing in-house in the place at the back with some sort of hands-on people, as it were.
Sounds amazing. And this sounds like you're here for good now. You're never moving again by the sounds of the effort that you
put in. I think after very, very much, I mean, my other half is amazing through this. She has dealt with me through some very stressful evenings. So she's been very supportive and everything. But yeah, so I said to her, you know, maybe 10, 15 times, I've said, this is it. This is the last time. I either stay here for good, or if anything happens in the future, I'm just going to, you know, pack it in, because I just can't move all of this stuff again, because it just becomes, you know, you move over a van full and it doesn't make a dent in what you've got, and then you're 10 vanfuls down the line and it still doesn't look like you've moved anything, and then sort of putting stuff in and moving it because you're decorating a room and then building a studio, and then that stuff's got to go somewhere. It's all it's all stuff and it's all got to go somewhere. And yeah, so hopefully I'm here for good. We shall see.
Well, there you go. You've had it straight from the horse's mouth. So get yourselves along. Obviously, make an appointment first. Don't just don't just turn up, as Tristan said. For now, anyway. And yeah, get along and support a great local drum shop. But to be honest, if anybody needs things doing, you can. I'm guessing you can do it by mail anyway. You can post a drum down.
Yeah, I have a lot of people, not only from England, sometimes again sort of worldwide sort of thing. People who want specific things done. Yeah. So yeah, usually if people are happy to post their items to me and are able to pack them safely and all that sort of thing, then they're more than welcome to send me an email and say, I want this rewrapped, or I want a new strainer on this. Send it down, I'll do it, and then it safely gets sent back. And then yeah, so for some people, if you're not sort of in the area or in a drivable distance, that's an option. Although I do have some people from the UK. There's one chap in Norfolk who comes down from time to time specifically to the shop, which he said is about 4.5 hour drive each way. But apparently it's totally worth the experience. So take it from him and not me. So I do mail order stuff as well if people aren't sort of in the area.
Brilliant. There you go, one-stop shop. What more can you say? You can't really, can you? Look, Tristan, thanks so much, mate. It's been very kind of you to give your time up so generously, and good luck with the new premises. And let's hope it keeps you busy and keeps those bills getting paid.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great. I really enjoy these episodes. So, you keep going as well.
I'll do my best. Thanks, Tristan. See you soon, mate.
No worries. Thank you very much. Take care. Cheers. Bye.